Millions of Americans are currently paralyzed by the terrifying approach of the April 15th tax deadline. You are desperately searching for tiny tax deductions while praying the government ignores your financial records. This surface level panic is exactly how the system keeps you trapped in perpetual financial anxiety. The immediate solution requires completely stopping viewing your federal taxes as an unavoidable, mandatory financial punishment. You must immediately recognize the complex federal tax code as a public blueprint of lucrative government incentives. Let us expose the surface problems destroying your paycheck and the systemic macroeconomic problems keeping you broke. The very first surface problem is the psychological illusion of the annual government tax refund check. You excitedly celebrate receiving $3,000 back from the Internal Revenue Service every single spring. The brutal mathematical reality is you gave the federal government a zero-interest loan for 12 months. Global economic inflation silently destroyed the actual purchasing power of your fiat money while the government held it. The immediate practical solution is adjusting your standard tax withholding to keep your capital compounding continuously. But we must dig deeper into the massive corporate lobbying matrix that intentionally creates this psychological confusion. The tax preparation industry spends millions of dollars every single year to keep federal tax laws complicated. They aggressively lobby politicians to ensure the average citizen remains completely terrified of making simple financial mistakes. However, understanding this surface deception will never solve the terrifying core problem of your financial existence today. The fundamental core problem is that you are surviving exclusively on a heavily taxed traditional corporate salary. The Internal Revenue Service categorizes human beings based entirely on their macroeconomic systemic leverage and economic utility. Because your linear labor provides absolutely no compounding large-scale infrastructure, you suffer maximum government capital extraction. Imagine you earn exactly $100,000 this year as a traditional corporate office employee. Before that money ever reaches your personal bank account, the government aggressively extracts $30,000. You are left with $70,000 to pay your mortgage, buy food, and barely survive. The core solution requires a violent psychological shift away from trading biological time for fiat currency. You can legally register a small freelance consulting business this week and immediately unlock powerful business deductions. An entrepreneur earning $100,000 buys their laptop, internet, and vehicle before paying taxes. The traditional employee pays taxes first and spends what is left, while the business spends first. But we must expose a massive technical trap called the federal self-employment payroll tax burden. Traditional employees secretly pay 7% of their income to federal payroll programs, while employers match it. When you operate a basic sole proprietorship, you are suddenly forced to pay the entire 15%. Therefore, sophisticated business owners eventually file a specific tax election known as an S-corporation structure. This advanced corporate structure legally shields a massive portion of their business profit from heavy payroll taxes. However, you cannot simply declare a fake business to avoid personal taxes without triggering a devastating audit. The government aggressively targets citizens who attempt to abuse simple business deductions without operating legitimate enterprises. The global financial elite simply scale this exact core solution by transitioning capital into massive commercial real estate. A sophisticated investor purchases a $5 million apartment building to house the rapidly growing national workforce. Working-class tenants pay monthly rent, which fundamentally provides the actual pure liquid cash flow for the investor. Simultaneously, the investor utilizes a highly advanced engineering strategy called commercial cost segregation to eliminate federal taxes. They aggressively accelerate the legal depreciation timeline of the physical building components to create a massive paper loss. This massive legal depreciation shield completely protects their new rental cash flow from the Internal Revenue Service. However, a massive legal catch exists that fake financial internet gurus intentionally hide from their gullible audiences. You cannot legally use these passive real estate paper losses to directly erase your traditional corporate office salary taxes. The government restricts these massive deductions strictly to people who legally qualify as active real estate professionals. You must dedicate your primary working hours to managing properties to unlock the ultimate federal tax shield. Furthermore, while commercial depreciation legally eliminates your federal income tax, it does not erase your local obligations. Real estate investors still pay massive local property taxes to fund local schools, police, and city infrastructure. However, sophisticated investors simply force their commercial residential tenants to pay these local property taxes through higher rent. The second core problem is your heavily conditioned psychological fear of utilizing the invisible power of debt. The struggling middle class uses bad consumer debt to purchase rapidly depreciating liabilities like televisions and cars. The ultimate core solution is deploying strategic good debt to acquire assets that produce untaxed passive cash flow. When billionaires require millions for personal lifestyle expenses, they never sell their rapidly appreciating financial stock assets. Selling their underlying assets would immediately trigger a devastating capital gains tax event on April 15th. Instead, they simply pledge their massive stock portfolio as collateral to secure a private, low-interest bank loan. The absolute core secret is that no government on earth can legally tax strategically borrowed fiat currency. Also, unrealized stock growth cannot physically pay monthly bank interest without triggering a taxable asset selling event. Therefore, the elite strictly utilize liquid cash flow from real estate or stock dividends to service debt. However, utilizing massive debt against volatile financial assets carries the terrifying hidden risk of a sudden market crash. If the global stock market completely collapses, the private bank will immediately liquidate your assets to recover capital. This catastrophic financial event is known as a margin call, and it violently destroys over-leveraged retail investors. Because central banks constantly print fiat money, global inflation quietly destroys the true value of that secured debt. They legally spend untaxed millions today and pay the bank back with severely devalued future dollars tomorrow. The strategy remains completely unfinished unless we examine the final phase, called the step-up in basis. When the wealthy billionaire eventually passes away, their children inherit the entire stock portfolio completely income tax-free. The government legally adjusts the original purchase price of the inherited stock to the current market value today. This ultimate legal loophole permanently erases decades of massive capital gains taxes for the next family generation. However, transferring massive billions directly to heirs immediately triggers a devastating 40% federal death and estate tax. To completely bypass this final trap, the elite transfer ownership into complex legal structures called irrevocable trusts. These private legal entities officially remove the massive financial assets from the personal taxable estate of the deceased. The terrifying wealth gap you experience is simply a severe deficit in applied macroeconomic financial literacy today. Stop complaining about a rigged financial system and start playing by the exact same public government rules. If you are ready to completely escape the financial matrix, you must hit the subscribe button today. We are systematically exposing the exact financial frameworks required to build true, untaxed generational wealth right now.